Welcome to Wide World of News. I'm Mark Halperin. We're talking today to another group of Americans from around the country and one North American about how the country and the world are dealing with the pandemic. We're happy to have everybody with us today. We're going to have a conversation, and we're going to start by talking about how you feel about how the country is dealing with what's going on. Let me start with you, Gary Lentz. How confident are you that the country is going to be able to deal with this effectively?
If we're talking about the reopening of the country and balancing with the health concerns, I think we've all been educated quite a bit over the last 8 weeks. By the way, this is Gary Lentz from Santa Rosa, California. I'm a mortgage banker. I think the country has been educated quite a bit in the last 2 months, and I think when people venture out, they're going to be respectful of other people's boundaries. I think businesses are going to have to work hard to attract customers to come to them and advertise how safe they are. And so I think we will manage it quite well. I don't think anybody's going to do anything really foolish that will imperil health because they would be seen as rightly as somebody who's doing that.
Okay. Does anybody have less confidence than Gary does about how we're likely to handle the balance in reopening over the next few weeks?
I have less confidence. I'm a small business owner. I just think that we've already seen that people aren't being careful. So I don't agree that people will go back into, their workplace or out into society and be careful. We're seeing a lot of the contrary. And so I guess I disagree, and I'm more worried about that integration.
Yeah, so as far as I'm Cody Two Bears, I have founder and CEO of my own nonprofit, executive director. I'm not from North Dakota. I know Standing Rock Indian Reservation is in North Dakota, but I always prefer to be called from Standing Rock. So that's my homeland. COVID-19 in Indian country has been kind of tough for indigenous peoples. Also, if you can remember as far back as 1918 when the Spanish flu hit, we were indigenous communities, indigenous peoples of this country was hit 4 times harder than a lot of the Americans in this country. That's all comes from the American Indian Quarterly report. And currently right now, our prayers go out to the Navajo Nation, which currently is experiencing a very hardship with this COVID-19 pandemic right now. Underprivileged communities, high poverty communities, especially Indian country, have been hit really hard because of the amount of resources that we currently have and are able to provide to our memberships.
Yeah, there's no doubt your community's been hard hit. I want to talk to 2 of you who are from in Atlanta now. Start with you, Hye-Young. Talk about how you've experienced this and whether you think your state, as a state that's been quite closely scrutinized, is prepared to deal with the transition back to reopening.
The area that we live in, our community, we haven't really left a 2-mile radius. Simply because we have 2 young, very young children. Georgia has opened up a lot of businesses, and I think personally it's very tempting to go to those establishments. However, I also feel in just recent days the social stigma of going out to a restaurant or visiting a hair salon. It's still very, very new. But I do think that particularly in the states that opened up early, it really exposes across the country that the different states were left to their own and their own state governments, local governments to try to figure out how to deal with the pandemic. There wasn't a standardized process or best practices that were implemented. So I think that if, reopening the states on a state-by-state level at different times really makes the country vulnerable to having a second wave of the pandemic, which could be, really polarizing from an, economic and health perspective.
Yeah. Toni, you're also in Atlanta. You're a massage therapist. Your business has been shut down, basically. How do you feel about the coming weeks in terms of the balance between getting back to work and also concerns about public health and your own family's health?
I agree with Hye-Young. I mean, it's been very tempting to get back out and get into everything, but it's been kind of difficult because a lot of people have not really been social distancing. A lot of people haven't been wearing their masks, and so it's very frightening because I have a young child too. She's 2, and it's kind of hard to kind of maneuver around to get to do things. It's really scary because if I don't go back to work, the opportunities of trying to figure out what to do after that or social or financially are definitely weighing upon heavily on my head too. So I'm just kind of torn between the two.
Let me ask you to a show of hands. I'm going to ask you something that's come up already. Several of you have spoken to. Raise your hand if you have a lot of confidence that Americans will adhere to wearing masks when they're supposed to and social distance when they're supposed to. You've got a lot of confidence that Americans will do that. Raise your hand. Gary, I knew Gary might be alone on this. So the rest of you don't have a lot of confidence.
Well, I just want to jump in there too real quick to kind of let you know the situation that's going on in South Dakota right now. I'm not quite sure if anybody's aware of the situation that's happening in South Dakota, but our 2 sister tribes, the Ogallala Sioux tribe and the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, is kind of at an impasse right now with the governor of South Dakota. Our tribes are a sovereign nation. Just to kind of give you an example, I'm a dual enrolled member of this country. I have a social security number with the United States government, and I have an enrollment number with, my local tribe. So I'm duly enrolled through this country, and we have our own sovereign rights. And just to kind of update you on the situation that's happening there is the governor gave these tribes 48 hours to open up their roads. They're public and state highway roads that cross through tribal lands. And our tribe feels like the protection of our people right now for the people coming and going through the state of South Dakota highways. They're shutting them down and putting up roadblocks to protect our tribal nations and our tribal citizens, especially our elders right now. So it's becoming a big, big problem in South Dakota right now on what tribal sovereignty is compared to what the governor is saying.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the big areas of conflict between a governor and people who live in the state. Let me bring in the folks who haven't talked yet. Renée, who is San Francisco based but is in Lake Tahoe now. What is your level of confidence that Americans are going to do their part, and what do you base your view on?
Well, I'm a communications professional. I'll say it's completely against human nature, and we've seen over and over again that unless something affects you and you have a personal attachment, like somebody that has had this or is struggling with that, then most of the time, if it is inconvenient, people won't do it. I'm very, very happy to live in San Francisco, which is one of the first places that locked down. I am up in the Sierras because I have an autoimmune disorder and I have asthma. I know what it's like to not breathe, and this scares the crap out of me. And if other people are scared and are willing to put on a mask to protect my health, I'm going to put one on to protect theirs. But I think there's enough people that just really don't feel that that's necessary, or they believe dumb things like pandemic, and they think that these, it's a false narrative or something that's been made up. And it's just really sad that that's kind of the state of the nation.
Rob, you're going to be our de Tocqueville here and give us a perspective from a different culture in Canada. Montreal and some other areas of your country are dealing with a pretty fierce situation right now. What's your view of the likelihood that Americans, as the country starts to reopen, are going to do their part to try to prevent the community spread?
Right. So Rob Bartlett, I'm a process improvement and change consultant from Regina, Saskatchewan, which is, for my American friends, if you look for the border between North Dakota and Montana, go 75 miles north and you'll find me. And so what I've noticed, I agree a lot with what Renée has said, that human nature, it's really hard until it's personal. So where I live, it's a province of 1 million people. It's as big as North and South Dakota combined, plus some of Montana. We've only had 6 deaths. They've all been in long-term care homes, less than 500 cases total. And we've been locked. And what I've seen on the street, like when we go out on our weekly trip to go out and get groceries, is now there's less people wearing masks. You see more groups of people out because it's not real to us here yet, like where I am. And we're really having 3 different outbreaks as well. There's an outbreak in Ontario, one in Quebec, and one in Alberta that are different, and they're done differently. They're mainly based in long-term care and meatpacking plants. that's where it is. So if you're not connected to somebody there, I think it's really hard for people who have put their lives on hold for 8 weeks to expect them to continue on. And what I worry about is what happens in the next wave as cases start to climb up again. If they do, if that's what the prediction is, if that comes true, how do we go back again?
Gary, I don't know you well, but I think I know you well enough to say you're not daunted by being on this big core issue in the minority alone on this group. So what do you think you see differently? Is it your life experience? You more faith in human beings, or you're more willing to accept risk than others? What do you think sets you apart from the others here?
I think the education process and the degree to which this has been internalized by most people. Renee, I will agree there are some people on the fringes, and I know some of them who are, pandemic and this is all BS. But when you see the president, who has everything to lose by what's happened to the economy, stand up in front of the country and say, this is a national emergency, this is a pandemic, we're locking down as much as possible. I think that I think that imprints on people pretty well. This is a serious thing. And I think that's been pretty well, that education has been internalized. Now, will there be people who slip up and things happen? Yes. Like you, Renee, here in Sonoma County, we've got 500,000 people. And we've had 3 deaths now. Maybe I think our 4th was this week. We've had less than 200 cases, I think, or about 200 cases. Very few are still sick. So if ever was a place going to say, oh, this doesn't really impact me, it would be around here. And people are being very diligent when they go out, and we're being very careful. But at the same time, I just don't think as Americans we can stay. We have to venture out. We have to trust each other that we're going to do the right thing. And part of what I think is going to keep us honest, frankly, is each other. There are those Karens out there, as they call them, who are going to tattle on you and get the Santa Rosa Police Department to come over to your house. I don't think that's the right answer, but there is that public shaming that I think will keep people mostly doing the right thing. I'm an optimist by nature, but that's kind of where I'm coming down.
I'd like to see the president get up and wear a mask.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
he says a lot of things, and he says them because his experts say he has to, and he reads them off something poorly. And what he actually says when he's not reading a script, what he actually does when he's not being told to do it, being like, he won't wear a mask. All the people in the White House that have now had coronavirus, he won't even put a mask on. Like that is not leadership in doing the responsible thing for others in your community.
the conflicting message. He has said it's a pandemic, but he's also said a lot of other things. It's coming, it's going, it's going to leave, it's going to disappear. But Gary, can I ask you, when you say educated, what are you referring to? What type of education? The education
about 2 months, 2 months worth of coronavirus updates from the White House. We've news reports ad nauseum. Look at our friend Mr. Halperin, who's a political expert. I remember reading him in the beginning of March, and it was all about Joe Biden's comeback in South Carolina. And then on a dime, all of a sudden it became daily newsletters, and it's all about COVID. He's barely able to get back to politics. This has consumed our news media and all of us. We've never seen anything like it. I hope we never see anything like it again. I can't imagine something that could have infiltrated our consciousness more than this has. It's, and I don't believe that all my fellow man is gonna be upstanding, but I feel like a lot of them are gonna keep those people in line just by sort of public shaming and reminders.
Hye-Young and Toni, you both are in a place in Atlanta that has seen so much focus and so much public education. Are you seeing, as you move around, are you seeing people social distancing? Are you seeing lots of people, almost everybody wearing masks or not?
It depends for me, it depends on the location. Like going to the grocery store, I think people are being very respectful. But when you go out and you see other people at different areas like restaurants or like even going to some of the other areas that are opening up, I don't see that. People are not wearing their masks. People are just gathering like they normally do. I think with the governor, it's been I don't want to say carefree, but he's been kind of lackadaisical about, saying what's particularly safe and what's not. You know, like I think that leads people to believe their own judgment. You know, they just go about doing things the way they normally done it. You know, so I don't really know.
Can I jump in a little bit? Last Friday night, I had some people over to my house for the first time. We sat in the backyard, safe distance from each other, and enjoyed some wine. Nobody hugged, nobody shook hands, but we talked. If I were to find out this week that one of those people tested positive for coronavirus, that would change my whole worldview. I would stop that immediately. I wouldn't do that again or think about doing it again. Similarly, I think the White House having 2 cases close to them, I think they're thinking a lot differently. I think a lot of the aides in those I see wearing the masks now. I don't expect to see the president wearing them when he's talking, but I don't expect to see anybody wearing them when they're talking.
Gary, I'm sorry, Gary, but let me ask you. You talked about education, and I know you follow the science of it closely. You may have had someone over who was asymptomatic but had been infected. So
I know.
So you say you change if you found out they were infected, but isn't one of the sort of basic pieces of guidance we need to assume that anyone could be infected, whether they're symptomatic or not?
Yeah.
Yes, but we're talking about opening up the economy, and so I think a big part of that is we're going to be around people who might be asymptomatic and infected, and I obviously we want to be as careful as we can in those situations, whether it's at a restaurant or a nail salon or at the park. But if we found out later, I guess my point is, as we venture out and widen our circle of what we're willing to do more and more, news that somebody we know or have come in contact with is sick will naturally make us pull back and do less of that. So I think there's a natural, this thing should ebb and flow. And I do want to talk a little bit about moving the goalposts, because I do think the opening up the economy, some of those rules are so stringent that I worry that we went from flattening the curve and slowing the spread to any death is too many. And I think there's got to be a balance in there, because people's livelihoods and family is at stake in a lot of cases.
Shawn, you like a lot of people, or some people in this group, have had your business dramatically affected, and you're in a state that's been pretty hard hit, Massachusetts, and that has not been very aggressive about moving towards reopening. Are you anxious to get back to work, or are you more concerned that under the circumstances it's not safe to do now?
Yes, so I own a yoga and meditation schools. We certify teachers to teach, and we also offer classes. So they're group classes. So yeah, I'm very worried about, I don't think we're ready to open with the first phase. I think Governor Baker's done a great job of communicating and not giving conflicting information. I think the education piece has been really confusing, because it's very conflicting, at least from the president, not from the medical experts. But yes, I think that for me in my position, it's going to be very difficult to open the business. I don't think we're going to see people coming back for a while. And a lot of people in my business, a lot of other business owners that I talk to agree. We think there's going to be a huge hit on people returning, and it's going to take a while.
So Shawn, what does that mean for you in terms of your business, your career?
Yeah, I mean, it means that we may not survive, for sure. We don't know. It's really, small business is not, we kind of, we don't have a lot of cushion and wiggle room to kind of get us through months. So it's a very uncertain time in this business. Yeah.
Jump in real quick. So when it comes to reopening the economy, there's one very simple thing that can happen that can make it open up much more quickly and better, which has not been put in place in a federal, has absolutely no plan from a federal level, and that's testing, widespread testing, so that people can have accurate results on whether or not they have this. If they have it, they can isolate. If they don't have it, they can go out. And then if you have widespread testing, much like South Korea has done, then people know who can and who can't circulate in communities. You have tracing. So if somebody does end up testing positive, they know everybody that they've been near, those people get alerted and they get tested. But we have absolutely not enough tests. We have no federal response that even has a plan for widespread testing across this nation. Every state has been left to its own devices to try to figure out how to implement something like this. It's a complete lack of guidance or structure. It's complete failure on the federal level. This administration has destroyed this response.
I hope we're clear that the government doesn't create the bottleneck is the labs that run the tests, the supplies. The government doesn't create any of that stuff. That's private industry. And so a lot of these bottlenecks are to be expected. Nobody expected.
But the government should organize it, though. He should be organizing
Yes.
it better than he has. We have to rely on our federal government to be able to organize those kind of things. The reason that it's such a mess right now is because we don't have that kind of leadership.
Why do you think the president and his administration haven't done more? Because you think it's political reasons, or you think they don't think they should be involved with it on some principled basis? Why do you think the president hasn't done more?
His son-in-law in charge of it. His son-in-law has absolutely no qualifications to be running any sort of coronavirus task force or setting up any sort of national response to anything. Jared Kushner is not at all an expert on any of those things, and neither is Ivanka. They need to get experts who are actually good at supply chain logistics and everything else to come in and create a response. But when you put your son-in-law in charge of it, that's why nepotism's bad.
I'm so confused. I'm so confused by this attitude that the government needs to create this stuff. This stuff is created by private industry. The government's power is to say to people like GM and Ford, make ventilators, which they did. They were able to switch and do that. Apparently these bottlenecks, I know these labs, if they could process these tests faster, they could make these swabs faster, if they could develop the interacting ones, they would. They all want to pitch in. The government can't make them do anything other than say, we need more tests. Everybody understands that. So how come it hasn't been done? Are the companies being recalcitrant? I don't think so. I think there's very real bottlenecks out there. And I don't think widespread testing can be the answer, unfortunately, because it is so impractical to test. You'd have to basically test people every other day.
Well, I don't think widespread testing is the answer, but the way to tamp it down is if I test positive, then all of you people on this call, if we were in a room, should get a test then, right? And trace it out so that you can stop Cody and Toni from spreading it to someone else by alerting them so that they can self-isolate. And you may not need testing, but I think the best way to get there is to have testing and rapid contacts of tracing who I've been in contact with if I have it, and allow those people to get tests so that they can then self-isolate. And I think what we'll see like flare-ups or outbreaks pop up sort of randomly across the globe and our respective countries as this goes forward.
Yeah, I think we're definitely over taking care of this at this point. We have 2 hospitalizations in our county of 500,000 people right now. We've slowed the spread. We've really, really slowed the spread. Now the point is, I think we have to let people go out and try to save their businesses. And I think there's a lot of great ideas. Apple and Google doing the passive tracing thing that wouldn't require people calling people and spending a half hour on the phone with them. I think there's ways to do it with technology that's pretty exciting, actually.
Just to give you a couple examples real quick, the rich get rich and the poor get poor in times like this. And that's how it's always been. And look at these corporations that are helping right now. They're actually, like places like Walmart or, Amazon, they're making more billions of dollars through this pandemic, where it's okay to go shopping in Walmart, but it's okay not to practice your religion in churches. It's just the way things are going right now and being directed by this government is ridiculous. And one just example that I have, being a person of color and of indigenous people, is that our people, Native Americans, we have died and we have been killed and we suffered so this American economy can flourish to where it is today. They destructed our lands, they've taken away our rights, different types of things so people can live in a comfortable state. So when people say that, they need to open up the economy and we need to go back to the norm, for us, the norm as indigenous people and people of color, the norm is going back to being oppressed. The norm to us is going back to having to sacrifice to build this economy up where people can die again because of disease, because of COVID right now. So they want us to go spend our money to open up this economy, to sacrifice our life again to be able to build this economy so the rich can get rich and the poor would have to suffer again. And that's just the common theme that's been happening. So to me, as an Indigenous person of color, I don't want to go back to the norm. I want to change the script. I want to be able to change the way we look at politics in America right now. This two-party system is not working. It's not working in a way, it's not working for people of color, people that are oppressed. It's politics are controlled by money right now, and that's basically they're going to listen to the people that have that money.
When it comes to opening the economy, flattening the curve was to make sure that there were enough hospital beds. Now that the curve is flattened, what it means when we're reopening the economy is we have room for you in the hospital now. And for a disease that puts 20% of the people that get it into the hospital and then kills like 1% to 2% in this country, that's a lot of people that die to reopen the economy. So until we have testing that can help trace where people are so that people can get ahead of this, and until we have an organized federal response of any sort of kind, which will probably not happen until November, and until like we have a vaccine where we can get this and people will actually go take it, and we're less likely to die from this. Like we really are just saying, we have room for you in the hospital now in a ventilator. So go on, go get sick, go spend your money. Like, no, thank you. I'm going to stay in. And I think that's a fear a lot of people have.
Why do you think that the governors and most of the governors and certainly the federal government have moved towards reopening when consistently public opinion polls show that, majority of people certainly feel the way Renée does?
Because it's all about money in politics. And we know that the people that are, sponsoring these people's campaigns, funding their re-elections, they're all corporations. It's all money. It's cycled by money. So these are the people with money and power that are pressuring our politicians in today's politics to reopen the government. Because now anytime they dip into their pockets and they tell us that, we're losing money because the economy's down, well, that's because it's affecting their lives finally, and they're not liking that. So it's basically the people with money and power right now that are controlling our political system and telling these people they need to reopen the government because they're losing their money.
It is a balance too between people who have really been strongly affected by this. I know, so I work for a municipality, and municipalities in Canada anyway cannot run a deficit. And if they're looking at not being able to collect commercial and residential tax, that's going to have very real impacts. We've already deferred $30 million worth of infrastructure projects that were scheduled for 2020 into 2021, and they're using that money for operations. So there is a strong need to get money flowing again to help as many people as can by that. And so, like, I feel very fortunate. I have not been impacted, and most of the people in my social circle haven't. But there's many others who have, and to give some hope and to get money moving again, I think is a very real thing that needs to happen. And how we get there, whether it's masks or testing or all of these kinds of things, I think it's responsible of government to work towards that in some ways.
I want to do another show of hands. Raise your hands if you think this pandemic crisis has brought the country closer together, made the country more unified. Raise your hand.
And the reason why I say that is I give a lot of props to the nonprofits out there, a lot of the go-getters that have been taking care of their local communities, and basically not having to try to rely on their state government or their federal government. There's been a lot of people on the ground that have been doing significant amount of great work to protect their people and protect their communities in this time. And you've seen a lot of people come together and step up. So,
absolutely. Toni, what are you seeing that makes you feel the country's more unified?
Well, I've been seeing that a lot of people have been gathering together, doing food banks, giving out, masks to different places, different people. I've just seen a lot of people trying to come together with community, like, giving out supplies and stuff. I've been affected, so I haven't been able to work for 2 months. So I've been going to food banks and stuff to get, supplies and things. So it's been helping me for sure, because I've been hit pretty hard.
Yeah, Hye-Young, you're in the same city as Toni, but you don't think the country's become more unified? Why?
Well, I mean, I think that it just, whether it's leadership or, many different variables, I think that if you compare the way that the US reacted to the pandemic versus other European or Asian countries, our response methodology and rate, didn't help the country. And I think it really exposed weak areas in our education system, our healthcare system, our social safety net. And to that effect, I think that the governor of Georgia or Georgia opened up early because we just can't afford the unemployment rate right now. I mean, Georgia has one of the largest economies in the South. And at the rate that people are filing for unemployment, I don't think that the state can manage all of that.
I want to go around and ask you all to give a one-word answer to a question. I mean it, one word. And I want you to think about it in this way. Every 4 years, our president gives a State of the Union address, or every year rather, and the president will always say the State of the Union is hopeful or the State of the Union is strong. I want you to answer what you think the State of the Union is right now. One word. The State of the Union is blank. I'll give you a moment to think about it. And I'd like to start with Renée, and I'll call on each of you in turn. Renée, the State of the Union is what?
Am I allowed to cuss?
If you want to.
Fuck.
Okay. Gary, the State of the Union is?
Teetering on the brink.
Teetering, got it. All right, Shawn, the State of the Union is?
In despair.
In despair, I'll count that as one word. Cody, the State of the Union is?
Disconnected.
Disconnected.
That's what I was gonna say.
Toni, you also say disconnected. And Rob, you can give me two. The State of the Canadian Union is what? And the State of the U.S. Union is what?
I think this Canadian State of the Union is hopeful, and my observation of the American State of the Union is uncertain.
Uncertain. All right, those are good answers. I'm going to ask you to do a show of hands now. We'll talk a little bit about politics, which of course is in an election year inevitable to come up as part of this discussion. Regardless of who you support between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, raise your hand if you think Donald Trump's going to win re-election. Anybody else? Rob's kind of in between. Shawn, tell me why Joe Biden's going to win.
I think that the people that were uncertain about Hillary, that kind of were on the fence, wanted huge change, just saw what they signed up for. I mean, I think we're in despair. I think most of the country knows it, and I think we need to reset before we get way too far in a worse state than we are. It's obvious.
How would you describe your level of confidence that Joe Biden's going to win?
Oh God, I guess it depends on what day you ask me. I want to say 70%, I guess.
70. Does anybody think Joe Biden's chances are higher than 70%? Nobody. Renée, let me ask you this. If the president does win re-election, what do you think that would mean for the country?
Not much. I mean, I think we need a functioning adult in office, and he needs to be surrounded by people that actually know what they're doing and doesn't have constant turnover. And all we have right now is some sort of warped series of Celebrity Apprentice where he just fires people randomly because they make him look bad. I really think that we can't survive another 4 years of Donald Trump.
Yeah, Gary, do you have a high degree of confidence the president's going to win, or you just think he's a slight favorite?
At this point, I wouldn't even call him a slight favorite. At this point, it's not great choices. I think Trump actually has done things. He's managed things pretty well, despite how personally distasteful he can be to a lot of people, including me. It's hard to say. I think it was a lot easier when the economy was roaring to see him being reelected. I hate to see that this pandemic has become so political, because it's worldwide. Everybody's suffering through it, and I don't understand. When Andrew Cuomo is seen as some kind of a god, when his obviously his results are far worse than anything the rest of the U.S. has suffered, and yet he's held up as some kind of paragon a great manager. I'm sorry that it's become so fractured politically.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to come out of this pretty strong. I'm in the housing industry, and there's a lot of demand out there, and I think the economy may come roaring back if we allow it to. So we'll see.
Cody, why do you think the president's going to be reelected?
As far as I know right now, I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. I'm not a Republican. I think he's probably the worst president we've ever had in history. But at the same time, I look at me being a part of this political process. I was a part of a couple political campaigns on the Democratic Party. And one thing I've learned is that, there's a few good candidates that were in here. This was the most highly colored, across the board, most populated, diverse of candidates we've ever had in the Democratic Party. But with the ones that finished, of course, there was, of course, 5 or 6 white candidates, of course, that were left within the process. And one thing I realized is that, Donald Trump has a movement right now. He has a big movement behind him. And it's tough to say that about the Democratic Party right now because we're so divided. And I've seen that division within the Democratic system right now, currently moving forward. We all have to unite together and stand together to be able to go out and vote. But right now, I don't see that within Joe Biden because I don't see a lot of the younger votership standing behind him to get out and vote because a lot of people, young voters, can't relate to Joe Biden right now. And it's just difficult.
Can I make a quick point about what Cody said? He said something really interesting. My brother is a huge supporter of Bernie Sanders, and he and his followers on Facebook are not letting go. They are hammer and tong going after Biden and this Tara Reade thing. And I just think it's, like you say, Cody, I think it's, Bernie Sanders was a movement politician. Donald Trump, for better or for worse, is a movement politician. I don't know anybody who's enthusiastic about Joe Biden. And I think a lot of those Sanders voters will either not vote for Trump, vote for a third party, or I don't know. They're angry still. And I don't think that's going away. It might be worse than 4 years ago.
Rob mentioned that he's not been directly impacted in terms of health or in terms of his employment, but obviously everyone on the planet has been to some extent affected by this. I want to try to end on a positive way to ask if any of you have had any experience over the last couple months that has been very positive that you could tell us about, personal or in your community.
Yeah, I just kind of want to let you know that, when the country shut down, the schools shut down, they expected a lot of online learning to happen in homes. And a lot of online learning, a lot of places don't have the resources, and a lot of our kids don't have the internet or proper tools to learn from home. So my nonprofit Indigenized Energy on Standing Rock, we provided over 500 Chromebooks so our kids can utilize that at home and to learn from home. So those are just the types of things that, like I said, a lot of nonprofits have been doing around the country to make sure that our elders are being taken care of and our kids have the resources and tools to learn from home through this time.
That's fantastic. Anybody else?
I would say that it's helped me to be a little bit more family oriented. I've been able to spend a lot of time with my little girl and my husband, and it's brought us quite closer together within this process. So I think that's been very helpful, and I'm grateful for that.
I think a lot of people are looking ways to help their neighbors who are suffering, and I'm seeing a lot of those people. I'm buying closing gifts for clients and nothing but restaurant gift cards to kind of support those folks and try to get them through. And I think everybody is seeing their community in a new way, and the people who've been disadvantaged from this, it's pretty hard to watch sometimes.
I also want to say that I think that, one silver lining that I've been able to observe through all of this is that I think that this is a bit of Mother Nature also resetting herself. I mean, as a family, we go on daily walks, and I noticed that, the quality of the air and the sky in Atlanta is just a different color blue, and it just looks cleaner. And I think it's, trying to, show us that we need to be a little bit more careful in how we are using, natural resources and the environment. I mean, just so many of these types of stories environmentally have been shared across the world. But then on the converse of that, the amount of human waste, from a single plastic use and those types of things has, gone up exponentially from, takeout food services and those types of things. But I do have to say, from an environment impact and fossil fuels, that seems to be improving.
That's great. We're going to stop there. I want to thank you all for participating. Cody, Hye-Young, Rob, Renee, Gary, Shawn, and Toni. Appreciate you all taking time to share your thoughts about what's going on during this crisis. I'm glad we were able to end on some pretty positive things. Great to hear about. I want to thank you all for watching. We'll be back with more discussions right here in the coming days and weeks on Wide World of News. I'm Mark Halperin. See you soon.
Thanks, Mark. Bye, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you.